Good day everyone, welcome to Studio 39 Design Studio. This is Richmond speaking, your resident architect. In this video, I'm going to be continuing with our ArchiCAD beginner tutorial series. But more specifically in this video, what we're going to be talking about is the elevation tool in ArchiCAD. Before I continue, I would like to encourage you guys to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel because I do videos like this every week. With that said, let's get into it. So as you can see, I'm still using the same project I've been using for the previous videos. So now what I want to do is let you know that the elevation tool comes pre-installed. Obviously it's not showing here because I've switched it off, so I just click on show all layers. You can see that the elevation tools are here. So what I want to do right now is I want to make sure that they are properly aligned. So if I were to open this one, so you can either open it in the project map or you can open it under the view map. So if I go under the view map and then open the elevations folder, and you can see that all of these elevation tools have a unique ID so that you can then cross-reference over here. So I'm going to double click this and open it in 3D. I'm going to show all layers because in this specific elevation, under the layers elevations, there are no layers which are switched on yet, so I'm just gonna show all layers. As you can see, it cuts off at this point and also on the left hand side, so the right hand side and also the left hand side. What the reason for this is because of the line here. So this point right here indicates where the cutoffs actually are going to be. So what you want to do is you want to ensure that it's away from the actual building, because right now the elevation is sort of like cutting through some of the elements like this beam right here and also the roof elements. So what you want to do is you want to move it back just a little bit. So I'm going to drag it to somewhere here, and then I'm going to extend the endpoints past this this paving, and then also on the left hand side I'm going to be doing the same thing, and then I'm going to be doing the same thing for all of them. So as we have moved the elevation tool a bit further away from the building, you can see now that you can see the entirety of the actual building. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my all my layers, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch them on. So if I switch on the 3D walls, obviously the 3D walls new, and then just I'm going to click it on the right hand side, and under the layer combination I'm going to switch on the eye to indicate that I want to see it in this particular layer combination. When I click OK, you'll see that all the walls are going to then show up in the specific elevation. So I want to do the same for the floor, the paving, the roof, the gutter, and everything like that. So what I'm going to do, Control L to open up my layers box, and then I'm going to switch on everything that I want to see. So I've gone ahead and switched on all the layers that I want to see in the specific elevation. What I want to add is I want to add the soil or the earth in the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mesh tool for that. Alright guys, I've gone ahead and included the landscaping or the mesh on this model. At the same time, I just switched on the cover fill for the the paving so that it indicates properly. So I'm going to go to 3D, and I'm going to make sure that the mesh is the mesh height is below the paving. So minus 300 for this. I think that will be a good number. And then when I go into my section, you can see then that it's showing properly. So a couple of things that I want to go ahead and go through is that what you can see right away is that there are levels, and the levels you can go ahead and check them out. You can see the levels, and when you go onto your stories, right click and then go to story settings, you can see the level difference from level to level. And then this one on this side is elevation from the ground floor level, which is indicated as 0 right here. And then ArchiCAD initially separates each floor by 3 meters, which is 3000 millimeters in this instance. So that's exactly what you're seeing here. The basement is minus 3 meters away from the ground floor level, and then the first floor is 2.6. I manually put that in because of the standards for where I where I stay in the world. It might be different scenario for you, and this is the next floor, which is 3 meters away from the first floor, and then 5.6 meters away from the ground floor. But what I really want to get into, guys, is I want to get into the settings of the elevation. So more specifically, the elevation settings. So what you want to do in order to set up your elevations to look properly, especially considering that wherever you see a window or glass, you can see through it. So we want to fix those things. We want to add some color, we want to add some text and everything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this specific elevation, and then I'm going to click on elevation settings, and this dialog comes up, which is the elevation selection settings. And then you can see the reference ID, then you can manipulate it from there. You can manipulate the specific name that you'd want. The source name, I'm not really worried about that. It's something that you shouldn't worry about. And then with marker reference to the viewpoint, don't worry. I don't really worry about that either. And then there's things like status. What this does is that under the auto rebuild model, it is rebuilding the model, so it's collecting information from the 3D elements which I've pre-created. And then when I want to do a drawing, maybe if I want to sort of like manipulate it to my liking, so if I go to drawing, what's going to happen is that everything turns into fields and lines. So I'm going to suspend groups at this point so that you see this ends up being a fill, and then all of these become singular fills. So I'm going to delete some of the fills right here, and what you're left with is lines. So if you wanted to sort of like model this according to your liking, you would then do something like that, as if you were working more specifically in ArchiCAD, or in AutoCAD, and then you can do your own specific detailing to this specific 3D element. But if you wanted to bring it back, so if I was just go ahead and delete all of this, and then maybe I feel like, oh man, I made a mistake, I can always bring that back. And how can I bring that back? I can go to elevation settings once again. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between that, and then I can just go to auto rebuild model, press OK. Now it's going to reference back into the 3D objects. So now when I select this, I'm selecting a specific wall now. I'm not just selecting a fill or a line. So there's something to note. Other things you'd want to get yourself acquainted to is that this is the elevation tool marker. Do you want it to show which floor do you want it to show it on? So you can either speak that I want it to show on the basement level, or you can browse I want to show on the ground level only. So let me just show you this one. I'm gonna press F2 to go on the ground floor. So because we are on the ground floor, it's showing, but on the other floors it's not going to show. Even on the roof side it's not going to show, but the other ones are showing because I've already selected that I only want to see it on one specific floor. If you just say all, it's going to show up on every floor. So that's something to note. And then there's this the range. So there's a horizontal range and then there's a vertical range. The horizontal range is just so initially it's indicated or is selected under infinite, and then you can also go ahead and limit it if that's something you'd want to do. So when I go onto the ground floor and then I select this, you can see that there's a limit to it, so it goes up to that point. So if I click this and I just roll this back, I'm not going to see any element that is beyond this line on the other side, but I'm going to see every other element that is before this line. So if I were to click on this elevation right here, you'll see that I'm only going to see this element because I cannot see further than where I'm specifying that I want to see to. So that's something worth noting. So if I were to move it just a little bit further, I can do this, go back to my elevation, and I'm seeing just a little bit further. But it's always good to practice that you have it under infinite rather than have it limited. This is vertical range. Vertical range is usually infinite, but if you wanted it to be limited, say I wanted to limit it to about 1 meter, and then I can just say okay, I can only see from the ground floor level and then 1 meter up. So that's something else worth noting. But it's always good practice to have it as infinite until maybe you understand what you're doing when it comes to ArchiCAD. And then you have your marker. So this is how you would manipulate your marker. So it's usually 6 millimeters high. You can either have it on both ends. So if we can go to the ground floor, you'll see that this specific marker right now has a marker on the left hand side and also on the right hand side. But it's usually best practice to do this to a section, but for elevations you just have it right in the middle. And then you can have uniform colors, or you can just switch this off and then it changes the color because now it's no longer uniform. So I want to have it as uniform, and then marker style, marker text style. So you can either you can manipulate the text here if then the color is not uniform from the marker. You can have your text bold, italic, underlined, whatever, aligned left, aligned right, or center aligned. So that's really something that you can go into yourself. And then you have your marker symbol and text. Let's start from the top. So there are different type of marker symbols that you can choose from. There's different styles. I think the one that we're using works just fine, so I'm not really going to change that. Everything else really doesn't really matter. And then you can also show the actual name. So you can have the first row, which is going to show that this is the south elevation, and there you go. And then you can also show the second row if that's something that you'd want to do. So it changes just like that. Control T while the elevation tool is selected in order to open the settings dialog. And then I'm gonna switch that off. You can have it customed. Maybe you can have it customed as my elevation. Something that maybe one day you'd want to do. So if I delete this, it defaults to the elevation which is preset right there at the top. And then you can also override the text styles. It's something that you can do on your own. So I just wanted to show you that, guys. And then we get to the fun part. So there's cut elevation. So in order to see whatever we manipulate here showing, we have to go to the elevation itself. So I'm gonna right click, double click here, do the same thing, open the elevation settings dialog. I really don't like manipulating the cut elements, but what you can do is, maybe if you wanted it to be a uniform surface for anything that's cut, to say, but it's usually better to do to manipulate that under the sections when you're creating sections, not necessarily with elevations. So I'm going to have this as cut fills as in settings, so I'm not really going to worry about undercut cut elements, but the uncut elements is the one that I really want to work on, because you have a couple of settings here. We have nothing, and then you have uniform pens, which is what's showing right now, and then you can have your own surface colors and non-shaded. What's going to happen is that it's going to give it some color, which is something that you might want to do. I really think this actually works quite well. Let's look at the other one. The other one is just color, but it's a bit toned down. So these ones have no shade, and the own surface colors shaded. So it's a bit more toned down in color for this one, as you would see. So that's what's happening. My personal preference is I want to use the well, let's leave it at shaded for now, and then you can have it maybe it's uniform pen. You'll see that all the lines that are showing are then going to change to this red pen, and that's what's happening. And that's only for the elements which are not being cut, because the elements that are being cut, they remain the same. But I don't really want to show that, so I can just switch that off. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is the vertical 3D hatching. So I'm gonna toggle that on, and then let's see what happens. So obviously this is a 3D manipulated element, so I'm going to switch this off, hide selected layer, so that I can show what's underneath. So this is the roof, and it has its own it has its own surface. So the surface that we used was the roof tile French red, and it has its own feel. But the other thing that also has its own feel is this element that we chose right here, which is the tiles light brown 15 by 15. So the reason why this is showing, I'm going to be showing you right now, is that say I select this wall and I go to surfaces, and then under surfaces, what I'm going to do under vertical hatching, I'm going to include, let's say, common bond brick. You'll see that it will then show up right here because I switched on vertical hatching. So under surfaces, once again, with that selected, I'm just going to send it back to background. So that's what's happening if you have certain things that have texture and you want to sort of like ensure that your elevation looks a bit better. That's something that you can do to make your elevation look better. And then other thing is I want to switch off everything that beyond the glass is showing. So what you want to do under transparency, I'm going to switch that off and tick that, and then I'm not going to be able to see beyond any glass. And then there's other things like sun and shadows. What you'd want to do obviously is under sun and shadows, the first thing you'd want to do is you can just switch that on. And then viewpoint sun settings, obviously right now it's custom. So if it's custom, what's going to be happening is that it's going to be using these numbers which I'm showing right here. But if you were to use as in 3D window, let's start off with the one that are custom. So this is how it's going to come out. So this is how it usually comes out, and then you can either make the shadows hard, or you can make them soft. And how are you going to be doing that is so under the viewpoint sun settings, you can use your as in the 3D window, so it changes. The reason for this is because I have it set something like this. So if you know where you are in the world, you can then set it up to your own liking. So if I were to move it just to the back of the house, and then I come back to my elevation, you see that all the shade is more on this side of the house right now. But if you wanted it to be uniform across all elevations, just ensure that you keep it at custom, and then you can custom it according to your liking. If it's not shaded, what happens is that it opens up the shadow polygons. So right now it's at 50%. So if you wanted to make it more harder rather than 50%, it will show up like this. If you wanted it to be a bit softer, maybe you can send it to about 25%, and then it's much softer. But if you select under the shading, which is this one, it uniforms it to around 50%, as you can see right here, which is a really comfortable color right there. And then there's other things like marked distance area. I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out exactly how this will work for you. Personally, my preference is that I would never actually work with that. And also the element contours and elevations boundaries, I'm not really worried about that. You can have them as none, as I do. Say you're working with the sun with a site with contours. At the back, you can then manipulate how you'd want your contours to look like. So obviously on this one, we don't have any contours to show, so that you can see exactly. So that's something on your project. Say you have contours in your elevations that are showing, so you can then manipulate them over here, but I'm not really going to go into that because it doesn't show up right here. So now that I've sorted everything out under here, we can just go to story levels, and then you can either have the levels as none. So show story levels, you can just show them as none. These are the things on the right and the left. So right now they've just been switched off. But what I want to do is I always like to have them showing, but I don't want them to print sometimes. So say I can have them showing like this, but I wouldn't want them to print. But if you wanted them to print, so if you wanted them to print, you can say display and output. Now what that's going to do is that when you send this drawing to say a worksheet, so let's just go ahead and place this on a worksheet. So these are the doors and window schedules that we worked on our previous video. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead under view map while the layout is currently opened, and then I'm going to drag and drop this specific elevation that we've been working on. And what you're going to see is that the levels for the floors are showing, and then are then exported into this view, which we're then dropping onto this sheet of paper. But if you didn't want to do that, you can just right click and open the settings dialog, and then just say display only. And what's going to do is that it's going to take away all those levels from here, and then you can then put them in manually. So right now they're not showing, so what you're gonna do is you can right click and then just say update, and then it's updated. Let's go back to our elevation. So that's something you'd want to do. Say maybe you can do many things that here you can switch off some of the elements. Maybe the lines in between, you can make them gray. Yes, and then you can switch off anything that you might not want to see. Maybe you can switch off the things on the left and the right, so the left and the right are going to be switched off, or you can switch off the lines that are more specifically in the middle right here. Say you wanted to do that. Alright guys, with that said, the other thing you'd want to look at is the built-in story marker. You can either have it as not showing, or you can have it as built-in story marker, which then you can manipulate on the next couple of areas, which here you can manipulate the text style, and then you can also manipulate the marker itself. So I don't really worry about this too much because it's irrelevant and I hardly ever use it. Not even hardly ever use it, in fact I never use it. So it's something worth noting. Here you can just add maybe a header should you wish to add a header to it, and then that's what it would do. But I never really use this. I never really worry too much about it because I only use it as a reference in when I'm preparing my elevations, and then I never really print them out. So I'm opting not to show the header, and that's what we get. So with that said guys, other things that I usually do is if I'm doing my annotations and say on the elevations I don't want to show the cut feel of this specific mesh tool, I can always just do something like this. Let's make it about 25, and then the other one is going to be like that, so that I can see through it. And that's what I come up with. So I'm gonna take this fill and then I'm gonna switch off the outer line type. But what I want to do is I want to do a line, and then this line is going to be a draft, and I want to give it a thickness. I want to give it a thickness of about 0.7, so I can then run it across right here from there to there. Really up to you guys if you want to do this. The only reason I do this is because I want to show that there's a natural ground line over there, and then I can add text as much as you want, annotations. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add NGL over here, NGL, make sure that the color is black. All that means is that this is a natural ground line. Have it on this side and also on this side. You can add other texts like so I'm using the same one, and then 1.8 in height, and then have it not bold, and then just say plaster and paint. This is the standard note, and then I can go here, or let's say this one. I'm gonna say SG, which just means a safety class. So I'll usually just copy and paste or drag copy across. Maybe I wanna say I wanna indicate this is a concrete column, and I just wanna switch off these the gutters and the fascia. So I'm gonna go ahead and say 3D gutter. It starts with the fascia, switch it off from here, and then 3D gutter, I'm gonna switch it off from here. That's for the downpipes and the gutter, so that I can expose the trusses because they are a nice architectural design element. That's what I want. And then I can go on to my sheet, and it's updating on its own here. I don't have to update it myself. That's basically how you make an elevation. So what and then how you can then export it into the specific area of your worksheet. That's it from me, Richmond. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. With that said, I would like to encourage you once more time to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, because I do videos like this every week. Love you guys. God bless you, and goodbye.